Alexander, good evening from Athens, and thank you for being with her tonight. What has triggered President Trump's decision to change course against Putin and threaten now with sanctions?
It seems as if Trump has become personally irritated at the fact that his public outreach to Putin has not yielded an agreement. Trump is instinctively very impatient. He wants results quickly on a rapid timetable. And so in May, when he was talking about ending the war soon and gave Putin and both sides and put pressure on Zelensky for 2 weeks, Putin kept the attacks going on Ukraine, and there seemed to be no tangible results from Istanbul. So my sense now is that Trump himself wants to raise the stakes and let Putin know that he is dissatisfied and wants a change in course.
Alexander, there's also a change among Republicans in Congress. Is it simply their will to align with President Trump, or is it something different?
So the will to align with President Trump is part of it. Remember, the Republicans in Congress have been split on this. Certain more traditional hawkish Republicans that have always viewed Russia as a strategic threat, if not competitor, have supported this new change in stance, like Senator Lindsey Graham, who has the sanctions bill. The other so-called MAGA Republicans, right, were much more skeptical about arming Ukraine. It seems Trump is trying to give something to both sides, though, putting pressure on Russia while saying that, in fact, European or NATO countries will pay for these new defensive weapon systems that he announced.
And what about the Democrats?
So the Democrats are pretty silent on this issue right now. There are so many different domestic issues that are happening that it's not at all clear that the Democratic leadership is going to publicly back Trump. But certainly there is, I think, a relief amongst the more sort of foreign policy establishment Democrats that U.S. policy seems to be tilting back. I will say that there is a concern about the 50-day window that was announced, right? And whether after 50 days, Trump really will go through with his threats on imposing so-called secondary sanctions for countries buying oil and gas from Russia. Will he really sanction India, with whom he has good relations with Prime Minister Modi? It's not at all clear. So there's a lot that can happen in 50 days, especially in an administration like Donald Trump's.
To that end, is Russia that resilient that can tolerate any additional sanctions from the West?
Russia has proven remarkably resilient. Russia has set up an entire infrastructure that is designed to work around and evade sanctions, whether it's using the Russian-led Eurasian Economic Union to allow re-export through countries like Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan that take goods from countries like China and re-export them to Russia, whether it is working out deals with countries like China and Russia, China and Iran over a shadow fleet and energy transportation, or whether it's getting military resupply from a new ally, North Korea, that has supplied more than 10 million shells. Russia has proven that it can find partners to work around and blunt the impact of Western sanctions.
On the negotiation front between Russia and Ukraine, everyone can see like a stalemate. They're taking place in Istanbul. Is there anything to expect from that front?
I don't think so at this point, especially because the summer is the period in which the Russians perceive this is their window to gain more territory. The conditions are favorable. Russian forces are advancing, especially in the Donbass. They know that come the wintertime, it'll be much more difficult even to overcome weakening Ukrainian defensive positions. The Ukrainians, on the other hand, are much more focused on striking Russia and striking Russian capabilities, both for symbolic purposes and for strategic purposes, as you saw in the June attack against Russian strategic bombers and bases using Ukrainian drones.
Alexander, Trump has grown increasingly frustrated with Putin over the lack of progress on a ceasefire in Ukraine. Is the deadlock affecting his image as the deal maker?
Absolutely. I think actually this might be his number one concern, right? That Trump made a big deal of putting pressure on Zelensky, of not taking sides in the Ukraine war, of saying he would end the war instantly. None of that has happened. And he even expressed public irritation that Putin is just continuing to bomb cities like Kiev. So I think his own personal image and status and ego are at stake, and that's why he wants to shake things up.
And broadly speaking, is there a way out to this conflict after 40 months of war?
It's very difficult to see at the moment the sides sitting down and agreeing on terms when both sides have incentives to keep fighting. Russia wants to reclaim as much territory as it can, especially in this 50-day window now. The Ukrainians are currently trying to make the war more costly by striking within Russia itself, as opposed to just defending its eastern front.
And what about the relationship between Trump and Zelensky? We thought some months ago, after the saga at the White House, that there was no connection. What has changed since then?
Everyone thought that the relationship was doomed. It appears that Zelensky has tried to placate Trump as much as he can. He concluded the minerals agreement, right? He has not been overtly critical of Trump again. He has basically given in to all the demands that the White House has. And so when he said this was the best call that they had on July 4th, when Trump asked about whether Ukraine had the capability to strike St. Petersburg and Moscow, it seemed that Trump was certainly warming up to Zelensky, or at least trying to use a new relationship with Zelensky as leverage to motivate Putin to come to the table.
But is that a real threat, Alexander? Is that really something that Trump might have in mind, bombing Moscow?
I don't think Trump would actually publicly green-light it in the way that he's threatened to. I think a lot of this is sort of for bluster. That would represent a major escalation that could have all sorts of unintended consequences. But Trump is increasingly frustrated, and his rhetoric indicates that, right? Mm-hmm. And so when he talks about considering letting Zelensky bomb the expletive word out of Moscow, it reflects that frustration. But I don't think this is a strategic move by Trump.
Alexander, thank you very much for being with us tonight.
My pleasure always.